you believe in the existence of extraterrestrials? Tell me I'm crazy.
Mulder, you're crazy.
I can't give up. Not as long as the truth is out there. I want to believe.
Welcome to this episode of the X-Files with your host Mark and Becky. Hi Becky.
Hello.
Right, so back again, 2 episodes. So we're covering episodes 11 and 12 of season 3 of this. You know what? Privately, we're starting to call this podcast Zuf, because it's a bit of a mouthful to say X-Files every time we talk about it, and it kind of, when you write it in letters, it actually, if you say it, it's Zuf. So if you hear us talk about Zuf, you know what we're talking about. And also, before we get to the episode, just a reminder, my X-Files episode by episode season 1 book is still on Kindle on Amazon. Just search for Mark F. Cain, that's C-A-I-N, on the Kindle store, and you'll find it. And you'll find a few of my other books too if you do that. They're very cheap and they're awesome. They're excellent, just so you know. That's an objective opinion from me, anyway. Okay, let's have a little Leona Lewis to lead us into the next episode.
You cut me open and I keep bleeding, keep bleeding, love. I keep bleeding, I keep bleeding, love. Keep bleeding, keep bleeding, love. You cut me open. Trying hard not to hear.
All right, here we go. Okay, episode 11 of season 3, Revelations. Okay, directed by David Nutter, and I was really sad to read in the notes of this. This is the final episode directed by David Nutter.
Oh, is it?
Shame. X-Files, yeah. Shame.
Aw.
Shame. He's been great. Been terrific. They've been very lucky with their directors, though. They've got some great direction. I don't think X-Files rarely suffers from direction problems. It's usually the writing. Sometimes it's the comedy characters too, but never mind. Right, okay. Let's give a general overview. What was your general thoughts on this episode before we get into some of the nitty gritty?
I think that this episode very much builds on the themes of the two-parter that we were just talking about in the previous episode.
Yeah.
And that basically that kind of anti-science theme that seems to be kind of permeating throughout the 2 episodes, the way that scientists are kind of playing God, it kind of, and all the negative aspects of that, like chemical warfare, biological experimentation, it kind of pits that against religion in this episode. And I thought that was really fascinating. But you kind of get 2 strands within this episode. You've got the monster aspect with the person that is basically going after religious figures that, he seems to be obviously, fake in the way that they're creating miracles or whatever. Mm. And you have that line of faith in terms of Scully, not Mulder. And I don't necessarily mean religious faith. I just mean faith in general. Right. She's very doubting in this episode, and we get a fantastic final kind of monologue from her. And it's 2 very different kind of tones and strands that don't quite mesh together for me, but they're both very interesting. There's a lot you can kind of say about them.
Yeah, personally, I think this is a bit of a hot mess of an episode. It didn't quite work for me, but it's got some very striking stuff. And I think Gillian Anderson was pretty great in this, and what she was given to do was pretty good. It's just the plotting kind of didn't quite work for me. And you said that this kind of led on from the previous 2 episodes. It also felt to me like an echo chamber against an episode from season 1 called Lazarus.
It did.
Where they go and investigate like one of these holy roller preachers in the South, tent sort of preacher, and some of the issues raised in that. We find out in that one, for example, Scully's a Catholic, a faith. And this episode kind of, it was interesting. I did notice from the very beginning Scully was wearing her cross. I just happened to notice that. Wasn't sure if it was going to come into it, but it was kind of interesting that they had that bit of continuity in this. It does get referred to in the script at one point, and I kind of interested if they wouldn't even refer to it, because that would be some kind of excellent dressing, if they didn't. But they did refer to it, so it was, it was, as is often in the case in the X-Files, it was a Chekhov's gun. It was put in there specifically to talk about not just the X-Files, every single TV drama ever made always does stuff like that. But like the beginning, I like the sort of preacher sermon. I thought that voice is really good voice. Sounds familiar. I didn't recognise him though. He's the Sergeant Major from Full Metal Jacket.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just from the voice. He looked completely different without wearing that hat. He looked much less imposing. I guess that wearing a hat the way he does in Full Metal Jacket makes him an imposing figure, even though he's not a big chap. I think he did a good job as a preacher. He was convincing actor. I didn't think he was an actor, that chap. He was just a Sergeant Major, but he was pretty convincing this. And it turns out, he has the stigmata, doesn't he? It's part of it, he's talking about faith and belief and, sometimes you need to just believe, and he starts bleeding at the hands. But we do find out it's like a fake. But this man gets him to one side and starts to, sort of grabs him around the neck, and it starts to burn, doesn't it? It was kind of startling.
Yeah.
That is like one of the first issues I had. That is never really explained or given any context in the rest of the episode. I don't think he does anything like that again, does he?
He does at the end. Yeah. I don't want to kind of give too much away at this point, but he does.
Okay. Now, Mulder's interesting because there's like a set of whole fake stigmatics who've been killed in the last 3 years. Internationally, it's not just a US thing. So he's kind of interested in that someone's going after this. Meanwhile, we kind of see this school teacher and a school class, and a boy's there, and he starts to bleed from the palm of his hands. And when Mulder wants, it's a stigmatic again, so they've obviously got to investigate. This is part of the same investigation. They go along, and they meet the social worker of the boy who tells them about. This boy, Kevin, has suffered these injuries possibly at the hands of his father, who's been institutionalized. He's not of sound mind. So she's turned up because of that. And then the nurse is kind of dressed in the wounds, and Scully just waltzes in and sort of says, how's it going? Which is fine. And the nurse says, oh yeah, I'm just dressing it. And she says, have you taken the temperature yet? It's like, oh man, who needs to be a health professional with someone just swanning up and asking you what about your job? Anyway, she seems to take it in good spirit and says, no, that's fine. I would have said, sorry, I've been attending to the wounds, been a bit busy for that. Lady, but that's me. Anyway, she just takes the temperature, and we see the thermometer sort of go up really fast, and then the end pop off, and the kid's kind of upset because he says, "Oh, I didn't do anything," and he didn't. But obviously, he's running some sort of, I don't know what that. I think that's meant to be some sort of supernatural sort of comment on that, subtext or something like that. And we get this interesting one where basically this is, a role swap one, isn't it? Where Scully's more the believer and Mulder's the skeptic. And it's actually referenced quite directly and quite nicely in the script where she goes to confession and sort of starts talking about her partner who, he'll believe lights in the sky, but he won't believe this. Is how she puts it, which is, we're getting towards the end there, but it's kind of an interesting turn. It felt a bit forced for drama, Mulder's complete anti-reaction to this. Having said that, it was kind of consistent with how he was in the Lazarus episode.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting. Gillian Anderson was good in this.
She was. It's very much her episode again, isn't it?
Yeah, and they tend to be pretty good ones when it's hers. As long as she's still batting with Mulder, I always think they're better when they're together in some capacity. Personally, though Anderson can definitely carry an episode for sure when she needs to. Trying to think what else happens. Oh yeah, Kevin gets abducted by basically Michael Berryman is a chap that a lot of you know the look of. He's been in things like Star Trek. He was most famous, I think, for his role in The Hills Have Eyes, the original movie, The Hills Have Eyes, as one of the mutants, cannibalistic mutants in that. But he's been in lots of things. He's quite a good actor, and he was pretty good in this. It was kind of apparently this is his favourite role.
Really?
He really likes it because he thinks it shows him. In a not sympathetic, but in a light that shows he's just like, any other person. And I think he liked it for that reason.
Oh.
Which is kind of cool. And I always like ones where sort of certain things, either physical or mental issues or physical deformities or aberrations or sort of mental health or learning disability issues become normalised in TV. I think it's always a good thing, I think it's always a good thing. And that's kind of, this is an early days sort of instance of that, I think. Though he is obviously, it's not entirely what you call normal. In there, he's talking about even being a guardian angel and stuff like that. And it's kind of unclear whether he means supernatural or just wants to look after him, because it's definitely got a touch of religious fervour about him.
Yeah, when you're jumping out of windows, generally.
Yeah. And he says he was asked by God to protect Kevin, and at one point he talks about he's Scully not having the same strength of faith as he has, doesn't he? There's a bit of that. But we get this guy running around, Gates. Now, just so you know, this guy's kind of famous in the Twin Peaks world. The guy that's playing Gates, is it Stephen Gates? He's, what's his name? Kenneth Welsh. He's kind of big in the Twin Peaks universe because in the second season, it becomes a significant sort of antagonist called Wyndham Earl. And he's kind of really good in that. So as soon as I saw him, I sat, bolt upright. I thought, it's him. Great. Arms crossed, all ready to go. And he's pretty good, but I think the writing's it's a bit all over the place. And the story doesn't quite have a decent through line to me. I found it hard to sort of maintain my interest, to be honest. Do you think that's fair?
Really?
Yeah. I had trouble with this one. I much
thought
prefer
it was
Lazarus say than this.
Yeah, like you said, it's kind of a hot mess, and there's a lot going on, and it's not very coherent, I don't think, and there's a lot of kind of, plot points that don't quite make sense. It just kind of moves things along, but I enjoyed it, and I think in terms of characterization, with Scully in particular, even though she's bouncing off Mulder in this episode, like I said, I think it's very much about her, and we get this quite detailed, characterization for her in that it's plausible and interesting, but quite unusual that we've got this skeptical Scully, the scientist that has this faith-based, this Roman Catholic faith, and that's really explored in terms of, I think, everything that's gone on recently, even in the last two episodes where, it's very, like I said before in the previous episode that we recorded, that it's very personal for her, all the discoveries in, I think, Nasai and 731, that, she's having all of these memories that were repressed coming back to her at once, and, the cancer aspect, all of it is very much kind of at her door. She's been kidnapped several times in the previous kind of couple of seasons. She had a lot going on, the death of her sister, and we really not so much a vulnerable aspect in this episode, but we see her doubting, and that is just not her character. You remarked in the previous episode about her kind of little conversation with Agent Pendrell, how he was kind of flustered and she was just, so on it and focused. And that is kind of her character, that we get this element of doubt here, and not necessarily in terms of religion, but in terms of faith. She seems to be, is she losing faith in Mulder, in his beliefs, and his beliefs in her, or their relationship? It's a really funny one.
Yeah, it's a bit odd, and I had the feel when I was watching it that they actually probably had something much more hard-edged and consistent going on, but bottled out and made it a bit less direct about certain aspects of religion. That's how I feel. It just feels like there was something stronger in there and they watered it down. It has that feel to me. I can't sort of, I've got no proof of this. It just feels like they had some things to say and they skirted really being on the nose about them. That's how I kind of feel about it. In fact, I'm just reading a comment here. Chris Carter said the theme of the episode was about personal relief rather than organised religion. That, to be honest, I feel it might have been more about organised religion, perhaps, and they just watered it down a little. Is a direct quote from him. He says, this episode deals with faith, not religion with a capital R or Catholicism with a capital C. I mean, it's interesting he makes that point. So why does he make that point? It felt like it probably was dealing with that and he changed it. Maybe it's that. I don't know. But the thing is, it just feels a bit spongy to me now. And like I say, I had a bit of trouble caring. It sounds bad, really, because I really liked Anderson's performance. But it was like, maybe it's like you said, 'cause they weren't feeling authentic to their characters in this.
No.
So maybe that was it. It just didn't feel quite right to me, though I liked it, well enough. I certainly liked bits of it. I mean, the kid was fine, and all the acting was fine, so it's hard to see what was wrong, really.
Yeah, it didn't quite make. I mean, they talk about throughout history, kind of saints and their powers, miracles that they performed. And I think Scully in particular mentions some like obscure saint that could be in two places at one time. And we get one scene in which conveniently Kevin manages to be in two places at one time just to kind of move the plot along. So it just felt like it was kind of catching up with itself, the episode. Yeah,
it was. In fact, I'm just looking. There are some. Apparently, they did do a lot of rewriting through the episode. So that is probably why it didn't feel entirely coherent, because they were rewriting. Now, whether they were writing along the lines I was suggesting, or it was just things weren't working. They do mention here. It says there was a scene cut with Kevin's father. It was an interesting little scene. Didn't really add much, but it was interesting. He was speaking in tongues. And that would have been fine, but apparently he actually says Clartu Brada Nicto at one point. That would have been goofy. I guess it's a bit of an Easter egg. That's the words from Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Where Clartu the robot is ordered by Gore, it's ordered to stand down, basically, I think. But if that had been there, I know it's a bit obscure, most people wouldn't know, but it would have been a bit eye-rolling, frankly.
Yeah.
But so they cut that, and I would have been alright with it if he hadn't said that, and there would have been tongue's always entertaining to watch.
And creepy, really creepy.
Yeah. There were some problems with it, I think. I kind of liked it, though. It is kind of, I am sad that David Natter's not in it anymore. Not involved from this point on, though. That's a shame. Did I mention when it was aired? I'm not sure I ever got to that. I usually do it at the top, but I can't remember if I did now.
I don't think so.
I lamented David Nuttally. Sorry. Actually, written by Kim Newton, who I think this was his or her first writing job for the X-Files, I think. And it was first aired on the 15th of December 1995. So it was the last episode aired in America. In last new episode aired in 95. So there's that too. I think it had problems. It was always, like every X-Files, it's always watchable and kind of fun. It's just, for some reason, I found it, I watched it, but I'm having trouble thinking back on the through lines and the plotting now. I couldn't even remember he'd used the burning hand thing twice. And what was the burning hand thing about? Was he a supernatural?
They don't really seem to explain it. They basically say that I think this comes through Kevin's father, that there's great evil in the world, and that it wants Kevin as because he's meant to be the Messiah, isn't he? That's what it alludes to. So it's huge. It's a huge, exactly. And it's not. It's kind of glossed over. It's kind of mentioned and completely glossed over.
Yeah.
But basically that he's some sort of a demonic entity was how I kind of Yeah, but it did remind me, as Lazarus did, the kind of church scenes at the beginning really reminded me of True Detective again.
Yeah.
The opening scenes where they're investigating, a small kind of, religious group, and again, I don't know whether I'm guessing they must have taken from the X-Files in regards to this kind of theme.
Yeah.
The writers of that
It
show.
sounds like it. It sure sounds like it. I haven't seen it, so I don't know, but it sounds like it for sure. See, at the beginning, I wasn't sure if he was like an agent of God persecuting the fake prophet, because that would be consistent with Old Testament and certain strands of the New Testament philosophies on this kind of thing. So it was
then he goes
unclear
after
to me.
Kevin.
But then he
So-
goes after Kevin.
Yeah.
So, that's fine. I did like there was a little hint that they thought, I think it was Mulder said, well, he could be doing it because he's trying to protect his father who did this to him. It could be like a subconscious reaction. No, he didn't say that. He said he could be self-harming. He doesn't even say it could be a subconscious thing, which is another possibility, isn't it? But that isn't raised in the episode. Yeah. It had problems. They actually looking at Wikipedia, it says that there was script problems and several rewrites went on. But they were quite pleased with the results. I guess when you're rewriting, you're going to be sweating bullets, aren't you, until the product's done, because it could go terribly wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just rate this one. What would you give this out of 10?
I'd probably give this a 6. It has some really interesting aspects in regards to the religious kind of say law, whatever. But like Owen's corpse, the fact that it doesn't decay, and Scully's Roman Catholic background leads us to think about incorruptibles, things like that. It has loads of really fascinating historical kind of references to saints and this and that. But like you said, it is just a hot mess, and the monster of the week kind of episode is it feels very shallow and one-dimensional, in that this guy is can burn with his hands and nothing's explained. It just, the rewrites become very, now you said that, kind of make it very apparent that this just didn't come together.
Yeah, I was even wondering at one point, when he fell in, because Scully turns up, but she doesn't actually do anything at the end. She doesn't have the opportunity to be a saviour. She just turns up and he jumps with the boy into the paper shredding thing or whatever it is. And then we see the boy holding on, which could have been he could have been two places at once, or I don't know. But Scully doesn't have that opportunity to help him directly. I mean, she pulls him out, but it's a shame. It could have been done a slightly better. But they could have used that finale to explain the religious good and bad stuff a little better, so we could sort of see he's more demonic, perhaps. Or there was lots of things they could have done to improve this. The way they gather that he's like head of a recycling plant is because the father keeps going, you got to look, he says something like, you got to look all around, and of course the symbol for recycling is around.
You've got to go, you've got to come full circle.
Full circle, yeah.
And the priest repeats that then at the end.
Oh, okay. The
Which
thing
is quite
is,
interesting.
as I say, I was kind of not really that engaged watching this, because it kind of lost me partway through in terms of the story, because I just thought it was a bit of a mess. Okay then, I said what I rate it? I don't think I have. I give this 4 out of 10. I think it was okay, and almost like every episode of the X-Files, I think all of them are worth a watch. It just had some issues. There were some great moments, though. There was definitely some great moments. I thought it was interesting, and I liked. But as a coherent piece, I didn't think it worked for me at all. Okay, then let's have a little musical break and move on to our next one.
At first I was afraid, I was petrified when you sprayed me with that can of insecticide. And then you spent so many nights thinking that we were gone, but you were wrong, because we chose not to evolve, and now we're back in your crawl space. I just love how you scream when you see me back at your place. You should have tried some Clorox bleach. You should have maybe tried some mace. If you'd have known that when you're sleeping, I'd be crawling across wash your face, and here we go across the floor. Just turn around now, 'cause you're not alone anymore. When you put down that Roach Motel, you thought it was goodbye. You thought I would crawl inside, that I would get stuck and die. Oh no, not I. We will survive. As long as you don't smash me with a glove, I know I'll stay alive. I've got a roach's life to live, and you've got all this food to give. We will survive. We will survive. It took all the
Okay, episode 12 of season 3 is War of the Coprophages. Right, a coprophage is a poo eater. Just so if anyone's wondering what that means. I've got really brief notes on this. I don't, and my last note, I think must be a typo because he's mad. I'm just going to read you some of my notes just before we start. These are the notes I wrote because unfortunately I was watching this in a place I couldn't write much, so I just made I wrote
This all sounds very sus. By the way.
I wrote icky at one point. I can explain this as we actually go through the episode. I wrote Bambi, I wrote Robot Guy, and I wrote Smart is Sexy. And then, this is the one I don't understand why I wrote this. I wrote Cockroach is Sexy. I think that I must have meant something else. You know what? I was meant
That needs to be on a t-shirt.
I know what I meant. I meant to say I meant to write there, cockroach crawls across screen. And for some reason, that turned into cockroach is sexy. That was a definite. Honest. Okay. All right. Let's get to the thing. This is our third episode written by Darren Morgan. Now, these are kind of getting to be almost legendary episodes. The first one was Humbug. And the second one was Clive Brockman's Final Repose. So this is the third one. Directed by Kim Manners. First episode of 96. This was 5th of January 1996. Which means this is nearly 11 years old from airing. Probably for some people listening to this, it's after 11 years old. So, okay. Because I've really got any notes, I'm going to go to Wikipedia to help me out with this one. But I can kind of remember it. It starts with a guy talking about, cockroach, we are as gods to cockroaches. We must be as gods to cockroaches is his final thing. And as such, we have to behave in a suitable way. And then he stamps on one.
Yeah, we get an excellent kind of, scientific biological overview of the cockroach, originated in the Silurian period over 350 million years ago, found in every part of the world, and the fact that radiation doesn't kill them, and by evolutionary standards, they're nearly flawless creatures, which is a really nice introduction to the kind of themes that develop throughout the episode.
Before we get into this book, into this one, I have to say this made me think very strong of a book I read once. I read once that was an amazing book that I have to give some props to. It's been a long time since I've read it. It's just amazing. It's called The Roaches. I think it's got different titles in America and Britain. I think in Britain it's called Unnatural Selection, and in America it's called The Roaches Have No King. Written by an author called Daniel Evan Weiss, with Weiss, and it's essentially a cockroach version of Watership Down. Kinda. It's basically a story from a cockroach's point of view. He lives in an apartment. Things are changing, so this cockroach decides to take matters into his own hands. I think basically this guy where all the cockroaches live has a girlfriend, and she's tidy. And they don't like it, so he decides to take matters into his own hands, to try, he comes up with a massive plan to try and get rid of this girlfriend. But essentially it's really funny because the cockroaches, they all grew up in a bookcase, eating the binding from books. But depending on what book they grew up in, they're an expert in that book. So there's one cockroach that pretends to be a French chef. And he balances a human hair on his top lip so it looks like a moustache, and he talks in a French accent, for example. But
sounds amazing.
The cockroach who's like the hero, so he's called Numbers because he fed on the Bible. So he thinks he understands humanity perfectly because he knows the Bible backwards. I have to recommend it. It's a really fun, interesting, and quite mad read, and it's funny and enlightening. You know, it goes through the entire history of cockroaches. He talks about how the cockroaches actually were the ones that wiped out the dinosaurs because the dinosaurs started stamping on them. And they didn't like it, so they figured out a plan between them how to kill off the dinosaurs. Anyway, I'm going really off topic here. I have to recommend it. As I say, David Evan Weiss, Weiss, and I think the American title is The Roaches Have No King. There you go. Anyway, set in New York, by the way. Anyway, let's.
I'll definitely read that. It sounds amazing.
It was amazing. I've read it a few times, and it is. I think it's on Kindle, so it's worth a watch. Right, okay. So I'm still haven't got to Wikipedia. Do you want to start us off on this one? I'll have a look.
So in this one, we start with the exterminator that gives us that wonderful overview in the basement of a doctor who I believe is he's working in, is it energy management?
Yeah, something like that. Is Dr. Eckerly and is his name. We find out in a bit. In fact, it's kind of, isn't it kind of irrelevant in the end? Or what is involved here?
Yeah, well, it's, typical, isn't it? Like Humbug, and everything else is Darren Morgan. So it's an amazing episode, and there's so much going on. And honestly, I was laughing all the way through it. But
it was fun. It was a fun episode.
Well, the exterminator is kind of, gets on with the job, and he succumbs to, I think it's anaphylaxis, collapses, and the roaches. Yeah, well, the roach that he stepped on, as he's kind of giving his speech to the doctor, comes out from his boot unscathed. So obviously, we get the hint that there's something more to these cockroaches. And when the doctor returns, he finds that the exterminator's body is absolutely covered with them. Yeah. And Mulder's, I love this, he's just kind of coincidentally nearby, investigating, he says, reported UFO sightings in Miller's Grove, which I think is Miller's Grove is a reference to the War of the Worlds.
Yeah, the whole episode kind of refers to War of the Worlds, doesn't it, actually?
Yeah, and that's what I thought when you were talking about the previous episode, when it was the day the Earth stood still. I'm completely mixed up, but I just applaud this all the way through. I was laughing so much. He keeps repeatedly phoning Scully while he's out, investigating, and we see her doing random, household bits and bobs, and she has the dog from the previous episode written by Darren Morgan, doesn't she?
What's it? Queequeg.
She's giving it a bath, which really made me laugh.
And she's eating ice cream and looking very cute in her glasses, eating ice cream. All that business, right?
She's constantly, she constantly says, "No, I'm not busy. No, I'm not busy." And he keeps saying, she keeps saying, "Do you want me to come out?" It's like, no, it's fine each time. But while he's on the phone, I think for the first time, he's approached by a local sheriff as he's sitting in his car, just looking up at the sky for apparent, UFO sightings recently, and a bug falls onto his windscreen, and the sheriff kind of, reveals that there's been a series of kind of attacks by cockroaches in the local town. So, of course, Mulder starts to investigate, and we get a scene of a couple of teenage boys and a girl drinking beer, and are they inhaling fumes from heated manure?
Yes, it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. But they are, yeah. That's exactly what they're doing. It's like, oh, whoa. What are you trying to say? I mean, this is a reference to the coprophages again, I guess.
Yes. We get that. It keeps coming back to manure throughout. But
just to go back to the sheriff thing, I did laugh when the fact is he says, "Who are you on the phone to then? Talking to your drug dealer?" And he shows him FBI, and he goes, "Oh, okay." And he says, "Why have you got your windscreen wipers on?" And he goes, "There was a bug on my screen." And he says, "Cockroach." Just, I couldn't tell. It's like that. That did make me laugh. But yeah, the first note I said was icky, and icky was referring to this really revolting scene with these kids. Oh man, not just smoking manure. That was, I could handle that, but it's like when the roach crawled into like a cut on a kid's arm and it's like crawling under the skin. It was so gross.
It really was. And then he starts to slice his skin with the razor, which grossed me out even more.
Reminded me a bit of Hellraiser 2, actually. That movie, Hellraiser 2, that kind of happens in that, doesn't it? And there's a patient in that who keeps imagining bugs crawling over his body, and then someone gives him a razor. It's really revolting. It reminded me of that. So whatever, because Scully names the disease, doesn't she? Where you imagine that, she actually tells Mulder what that is. So it's kind of grim.
Is it delusional parasitosis?
Something like that. Yeah, that sounds about right.
But that's a really scene. And that's the thing about this episode. Again, from the manure and everything, you know it's going to be another kind of gross out episode. And Darren Morgan seems to really kind of revel in those kind of scenes. But I noticed that one of the two teenage boys was Tyler Labine in a very early role, who's Dale in Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Oh, really? I hadn't put that together.
Yeah.
Not well spotted.
Which did make me smile.
Yeah. Then Mulder finds a cockroach in his place, doesn't he? But it kind of disintegrates and it appears to be metal, which is really weird.
Yeah, and it cuts his finger, doesn't it? And he seeks medical attention, and the doctor is kind of saying to him, "Do I need to evacuate my family?" Which does make me laugh. And Mulder's like, "I don't know. I don't have all the answers." Yeah.
The sheriff I was wondering whether there's this like facility nearby. He wonders if there's like killer cockroaches being bred there. It's kind of funny. And then a little while later, there's a medical examiner found dead in a bathroom stall, which appears to be covered in cockroaches. But then
that is the doctor who examined Mulder.
Oh right, okay. Yeah.
He literally examined him, and this is the whole episode, isn't it? It's about paranoia and
connections.
Well, the whole episode's about paranoia and that kind of mass scale hysteria. That we've seen associated with various different things in the news and whatever. But he is, like I say, questioning Mulder about whether or not he should kind of completely basically get his family, out of the city, goes to the toilet, and then he is attacked and killed by the cockroaches, which again will get Mulder speaking to Scully, and I think at this point she's eating ice cream or whatever. And
and she says, "Is one of his eyes bloodshot, right, or something like that?"
Yes. She knows everything, which is brilliant.
Yeah, she's a bit Sherlock in this one. She kind of puts stuff together straight away, just talking to her on the phone briefly. She said, it's this, because of this and this. She explains that sometimes people straining on the toilet could give themselves a brain aneurysm. That has got to be something Darren Morgan just read and said, I've got to put that in the script. It's so obviously, because it's like one of those tragic but funny things, isn't it? Overstraining, it made me laugh. And again, we're feeding back into the War of the Worlds thing, this time the Orson Welles, broadcast of War of the Worlds where people thought it was real and started like killing themselves and stuff in 1938. I think it was 38, something like that. And it's kind of and that's all about paranoia and people hurting themselves because of panic rather than reality. There was one scene that did make me laugh where Scully she wants a road map and she goes into a store, but there's general panic going on. That did make me laugh. And people are fighting over stuff, and like in the end, Scully shouts at them, and she says, "Look, there's nothing going on. If you stop panicking, it'll be fine." And then she just goes back to buying a map, and then they still kick off with a big fight. And then a box of chocolates spilled, like Maltesers kind of thing, falls on the floor, round chocolates, rolls across the floor. Someone goes, "Roaches!" and everyone runs out of the store. Just leaves Scully there. And there was a nice bit.
She eats them.
She eats one of them, which is a callback to Humbug, right? It's a callback to Humbug.
It really is. And I don't know about you, but the whole kind of episode, but particularly when she was in the supermarket, really, really reminded me of The Mist.
Yeah, there was a touch of that about it. It could have been. Yes, it was. It basically was. This was made well before The Mist, obviously, but yeah, there was a touch of that about it too. It's like people can be terrible when they're panicking. At one point, then Mulder goes to this house and where this research going on, and he's on the phone with Scully, isn't he? And he's talking away to her. and we see these cockroaches coming out of the wall, and we think he's going to see something horrific, but suddenly his face changes and he just says, "Gotta go," and hangs up. And it's because he meets the scientist, Dr. Bambi Berenbaum. He's an entomologist, right?
Yep.
And she's studying cockroaches to develop better pest control.
And it just doesn't sound like a softcore pornography script. I don't know what does.
Yeah. Bambi Berenbaum. Now, it's funny, when this actress came on, I thought, I know that woman from somewhere. And I went through her filmography, and I thought, I've definitely seen her in something. And you know, I really know her, but I couldn't place her. And then I've tracked it down. She's in one episode of Married with Children, an amazing one where Bud Bundy basically does all these stupid, dangerous things because it turns this girl on. Like, jumps out of planes and stuff like that. And she was really striking in that. It's her voice. She's got quite an unusual sort of timbre in her voice.
And she's in
I didn't recognise her from her face. I recognised her from her voice. Yeah, I don't remember her from Showgirls. I did find that. I was thinking, was it Showgirls? But no, I can only remember a couple of actors in Showgirls.
I watched it recently, so.
Okay. Which one was she in Showgirls?
D?
Was that the new one? I don't want to talk about Showgirls too much because it's pretty graphic, isn't it? But even any bit of dialogue from that film is a bit graphic. But is she the new one? Or the one where the owner says, if you do this, you'll keep your job? And she goes,
no, she's the new one. Yeah, she's the new one.
Oh, it's her. Okay, well, I didn't recognise her for that. But she was pretty good in this. She did woke me up, and it was funny the way Mulder just goes, "Gotta go." And you can kind of see why, and it's kind of really fun.
But she reminded me of Phoebe Green. She even looks like her.
Yeah, better actress though.
Oh, how can you say that?
Okay. Yeah, there was a touch of the Phoebe Greens about it. And in fact, that comes back later. At one point, he mentions to Scully, he's been talking to Bambi, and she goes, her name's Bambi. And then he asks her, and then Mulder asks her a lot of other questions, and she goes, her name's Bambi. Is her response. She can't believe someone's called Bambi. Well, both her parents were naturalists, yeah, but Bambi, you know.
I love how, like, she's so, obviously, you know, while all this is going on, this madness, she's so logical and straight-headed. That plays off in terms of the comedy so well. And I think both of, like, her and David Duchovny, Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny in this episode, the comic timing is just perfect.
It's very good. It's very good. I also like how some of the major characters undermine Mulder quite a bit, his belief systems quite a bit, but he doesn't pick him up on it because it's just not the right time, which is not like him. At one point she says, yeah, swarms of insects are often taken to be UFOs. And he's like, which I didn't realise that obviously ties back to the UFO spotting, why he's hanging around there, right? Yeah, I hadn't put that together actually. And then another person dies in Mulder's hotel. And we get a close-up of his feet, and it's pretty gross. I don't want to insult anyone, but man, we could have done without a close-up of that guy's feet. And this time, Mulder concludes he died of fright. And at this point, Scully's like, oh, God, all right, I'm coming. It's kind of like that.
I think also, since Dr. Bambi's mentioned, she's a little bit more than a little bit jealous.
Yeah, there's a bit hackles up.
You know.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right there. There's definitely something in that. Doesn't she mention there's this guy doing sort of AI work or robotic work with replicating insect behaviour? So she, you know, when he tells her about this like metal skinned cockroach, she suggests to go and talk to him. So we go and visit him, and it's kind of funny. They've got this guy, he's in a wheelchair, so he's walking around on a mechanical means. He's talking through an electronic mechanism, and he's got little insect-like robots sort of running around. And it was all there for comedy, I'm sure it was. And it was really great. At one point, there's one following Mulder around, and he says something like, oh, is this one just following rules? And the doctor goes, no, he likes you. And they went off. And then he starts going about, we'll be using robot intelligences that may be insect-like when we send probes to other planets. That'll be the real way we would explore the universe, not by sending humans. And he says, people that think, there are little grey aliens flying around observing us are just, immersed in ridiculous science fiction. And Mulder's like,
Did you not think as well, the doctor's name, who's Dr. Ivanov, really reminded me of Isaac Asimov?
Yes. I didn't occur to me, but now you said it, yeah, perfectly. So there's some digs at Mulder there, back there. So I like, and at one point, Mulder kind of acknowledges it. He picks up a cockroach and says something like, take me to your leader or something like that. Some cliche sci-fi phrase. It's kind of fun. So the premise is the premise is almost secondary to the writing in this. The writing's really fun and put together. And it's kind of, the implication is these cockroaches are alien probes, ultimately, or possibly. But it doesn't really matter, does it, frankly? And then also the doctor starts going about the only really fundamental problem of this is you've got to find an external source of fuel that is renewable. When you get to the planet, you can't send them with the fuel. They need to find it. And he suggests dung is a good one. And if they send stuff here, they might use that, is the kind of implication. So that's kind of fun. We get, I did like the scene where Scully pulls up finally in the car, looks at the woman and goes, Bambi. And she just treats it as normal, doesn't she? She doesn't say, who are you? She says, Mulder's in there, or something like that.
She's like, do you want me to come with you? And she's like, this is no place for an entomologist.
An entomologist. I really thought at one point she was this is no place for a girl, or something like that. I really thought she was going to say something like that. But that's a good line, isn't it? And no place for an entomologist. Then we see the doctor from the beginning. He's kind of paranoid, isn't he? But they're in a place full of methane gas, so it's kind of dangerous. And basically it explodes with Eckerly inside, presumably destroying all of the cockroaches. While it's going on, Ivanov sort of rocks up to talk to Mulder. And he meets Bambi, and they start talk, and they're obviously bonding really quickly, talking about insects and robots. And doesn't Scully say, smart is sexy? Or something like that. It's kind of funny that Mulder loses out to the guy in the wheelchair, the old guy in the wheelchair. It made me laugh.
Yeah.
And then we get a bit of purple prose from Mulder typing up his stuff on the screen while he's saying it. So we're going, you're right.
Which is a great riff on Scully doing that. I thought it was a nice little. It's got to be Darren Morgan. Yeah,
and then a weird looking big cockroach kind of is crawling around on his desk, isn't it? And he's he picks up a X file and then smashes it with it. X file. I was wondering if it'd lift it up and it'd just crawl off, because that kind of riffing on the very first thing. There's some fun stuff in here for sure. Isn't there a point where Scully's reading Breakfast at Tiffany's as well?
She is. That did make me laugh.
I don't quite understand what's that. I'm trying to think what that refers to. This Holly Go. No, I can't think of a reference how that could relate to this. So yeah, it was kind of cool. Lots of cockroaches. I hate cockroaches, by the way. I really, I'm like Mulder. I don't mind bugs. I actually studied entomology in my final year of my degree, so I like bugs, but cockroaches I hate. I absolutely hate. Mainly because I've lived in places that have been cockroach infested when I was a student. It's like, So, this was kind of gross and disgusting, but really funny.
I don't think I've ever seen one.
Have you not?
No.
Lucky you. I've got some stories which I'm
Say
not going
that
to
now.
tell
We'll be
you.
infested now.
Sometime I'll tell you some stories about cockroaches that are just revolting. Luckily, none of them happened to me, so it's all right. Did you notice the cockroach crawl across the screen in one of the later scenes between the Doctor and Mulder?
I did indeed. And is that the only time the series kind of breaks the fourth wall in terms of the whole series? Because I didn't remember that.
I didn't remember it, but I thought it did make me laugh when it happened. And because I remember I should have written this in my notes. I shouted. Luckily, I'd left the garage at this point, so I was alone when I watched this bit. I did shout, "That's so meta!" when I saw it. Yes, that was kind of funny. They did that really well. It looked really realistic on my TV as well. in high def, it was like really realistic. It did look like a cockroach on the screen. So very fun episode. Anything else to say about it?
Nothing much more really. Just to say, like, it seemed to follow on quite quickly from Darren Morgan's last episode. But I enjoyed it, and it kind of starts because I've watched a few more episodes than you, haven't I? In this series, I'm a little bit further on. Yeah. So it's kind of
breaking the fourth wall now.
So it kind of starts off this really strange. The next few episodes for me just are really bizarre, but it kind of eases you into those. But I love anything by Darren Morgan. I think it's absolutely hilarious, and it's nice to have that break, especially after the very kind of grim episodes that we had with the two-parter.
Yeah. It's interesting that this one is also a bit of a hot mess in terms of story. Well, not so much as a hot mess, but there's no real explanations going on to what's happening. But you don't care because the rest of it's so good, you don't mind. Do you know what I mean? So in a certain sense, it's somewhat inconsistent. Not inconsistent. You don't really get to the bottom of what's going on, but it doesn't matter with this episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas in other episodes where it's more serious, I think the more serious an episode is, the more it's got to work, and be well put together. When it's more fun, it doesn't matter. Or if it's got something really striking about it, it doesn't matter. If it's really something really fantastic, you can pull past that. I really like this one. What would you give this one out of 10?
I'd have to give this one a 9.
A 9. I can't remember. What did you give Clyde Brockman? Can you remember?
I was either a 9 or a 10.
They're about the same.
Yeah.
I'd say Clyde Brockman's better than this one. I think that's a much better episode. But this is a really good one. I'd give this one an 8. Though I think that might be a bit stingy. It's 8 going on 9 for me, rather than 8, just better than the 7. It's kind of...
Yeah.
So pretty good. Okay, just one other thing to mention, I think, before we finish. We've got a Facebook page for this podcast. It has been mentioned on the Good, the Bad, and the Odd sort of Facebook page and linked out, but I think it's worth mentioning here. So if you want to go to it, it's www.facebook.com/groups/ all as one word, X-Files, and I'll spell that out, XFILES, XPHILES. So groups/ X-Files. Come join us. Come talk about the X-Files and anything connected. We love to talk about anything connected, Lone Gunman, Millennium, influences like Kolchak, Quatermass, any of those we'd be happy to talk about on that Facebook group. So come join in. Becky and I are both admins of that, so we'll be happy to sort of add you to the group and talk to you about any of these issues, any episodes, whatever you want. If you've got any questions we can do, or we can address in the podcast, we'd be happy to answer them in that format, or any feedback. That'd be cool. Okay, right. I think that about winds up this show. So bye from me.
Bye from me.
And remember, they're watching.
I drive